A good day to all of you and welcome to the show Living Multiculturalism with Mayank Bhatt. Friends, today we have with us a tabla player Ravi Naimpally. He is based in Toronto for almost 2 decades and has created a fan following that is enviable. We are going to talk to him about what the tabla is, how he has become interested in this, and what does he plan to do. Welcome Ravi to the show.
Thank you, Mayank.
So Ravi, what is the tabla? Let's begin with the basics.
Well, the tabla is basically two drums that are played with the hands and the fingers, and it basically originates in North India. It's approximately 200 years old and is played in mostly in the northern area of India.
So why the two drums? It's, what fascinates me about the tabla, in addition to of course the percussion sound that it is able to do,
Yes.
is why do we have two? Why not one?
Well, the two drums, you have basically a bass drum, and then you have a higher pitched treble drum. So this gives you a palette of different colors, and also syllables and language. It expands the amount of sounds that you can make from between the low and the high. So the tabla, it has a wide range.
And is this something that is you can only play tabla if it is Indian classical, or is it something that can be is it an instrument that can be adaptable or adapted to any other form of music?
Absolutely, I think the tabla is a drum that has a very pleasing sort of sound to it. So it has been adapted by many people in many different circumstances. Of course, the great Zakir Hussain has done a lot of pioneering work in playing the tabla, in many different contexts, and allowing that instrument to shine in many different places.
It's kind of fortuitous that you should mention Zakir Hussain. People who know and understand Indian classical traditions know Ala Rakha as the probably the best known tabla player that the 20th century had ever seen, and then his son Zakir Hussain kind of takes off from where the father left, but he goes into another direction. And what little that I have seen of you, you also seem to be kind of not, you're not happy restricted by, how do I say, the traditional grammar of the music or the traditional grammar of the instrument, and you would like to do different things. So basically the question is, let's have the history of good tabla players, what they have done, how they have inspired you, and where you're going to go with it.
Okay. Well, I'm inspired by all the great tabla players. Of course, Ustad Zakir Hussain and Ustad Ala Rakha and Ustad Amajan Tirakwa Khan Sahab, and my own guru Pandit Anindo Chatterjee. Those are just a few of my inspirations, but there's many other tabla players that would probably take too long to mention all of them. But for me, I think wherever, when I first started playing tabla, my intention was to play Hindustani classical music, and that's what my parents used to listen to. My father was a music organizer, so he was bringing musicians here to Canada and organizing their concerts. So that was the music I was exposed to and I wanted to play. So that's what I was training for. But living here, I would get asked sometimes by somebody, a non-Indian, if I could play with them. And at first, these situations were very uncomfortable to me, because I thought, this is not Hindustani classical music. I don't know what to do exactly. You can't sort of follow the same sort of customs and formalities that are part of Hindustani music, playing with a jazz guitar player or something, right? So, but over time, I've come to realize that those circumstances are also valid circumstances and allow me to discover new things about my instrument that I may not have done, had I just been playing Hindustani music. So, and I think they sort of, it feeds each other. So I don't think it's necessarily a watering down. I think it basically enhances a person's musicality to be able to play in many different contexts and to make the instrument shine and discover new things all the time.
One of the questions that I have kind of been part of me since I have been here, and I haven't been here as long as you have been here, is this place, Toronto especially, offers substantially more avenues to be able to understand what I will say, global culture.
Yes.
And music is definitely a major part of that culture.
Absolutely.
And so I want you to describe how has Toronto shaped your influences in music?
Well, Toronto is, such a multicultural city. There's so many different communities here of music, and one of the first things that happened to me when I moved here was I established some connections with the Iranian community. So, to be able to play that music and to interact and perform with the Iranian music was something that has definitely affected me, because when I listen to that music, that sounds like, oh, the roots of Hindustani music, it's sort of going back even further. So it was an interesting discovery for me to hear where certain things came from, and I felt like I was connecting to a bit of my own history in a way, to be able to do that. So, and like that, with all the other different communities that I have played with, you discover that, yes, Indian music is such a highly developed musical culture, and especially the drumming and rhythmic culture in India is so advanced, but there are also other advanced musical and rhythmic cultures like in Africa and in Cuba and in Brazil, and all these countries also have incredible rhythmic traditions.
You have began to learn tabla at what age, and for how long did you kind of, what I want to understand from you is what has been your journey in this with this instrument?
Okay. Well, my parents are not professional musicians, although my uncle, Pandit Nikhil Ghosh, was very famous tabla player in Bombay, and his brother was a famous bansuri player, Pandit Manalal Ghosh. So even though my immediate family was not professionally involved in music, I did have this part of the family that was involved in music. So that obviously had a very profound influence on me from a young age. And so I began playing at a very young age, because my mother sings and composes bhajans, so I used to play with her. And then it was not until maybe I was in just pre-teens when I started to take more of an interest in tabla. So, my dad first taught me some basic things, and then, as I got older, it became apparent that I needed a guru, somebody who could really guide me. So at that point, I used to go to Bombay in my summer holidays and study with my uncle, Pandit Nikhil Ghosh.
Okay, and you continue to do that under a different guru these days?
Yeah, after my uncle passed away, then I have been studying with Pandit Anindo Chatterjee. He's based in Calcutta, but he also has now, I used to go to Calcutta, and now he's got a school in New York. So usually, it's very easy to bring him here from New York or to go to New York myself.
Why is guru such an important element in Hindustani classical music?
Well, it's such a huge tradition in terms of repertoire. The repertoire is massive repertoire. So you need somebody who is a source for that material. And moreover, you need somebody who has not only just knows the material, but has some insight into the material so that they can share with you not just the composition, but some how to actually execute the composition with ease, and what the basically give you some ideas about what the composition is about and how to go about interpreting it. So in this respect, I think the guru is sort of essential in this music, because it would be I think pretty much impossible to learn this music without the help of a guru.
I'll take a break. And friends, we're watching Living Multiculturalism with Mayank Bhatt. We have Ravi with us, who is an astute tabla player, well known in the musical circles in Toronto. We'll continue chatting with him.
When you or your loved one is injured in a car or slip and fall accident, one of the most important decisions you're going to make is the lawyer that you hire. At Alam Law, we take pride in the fact that every person who calls for a free consultation speaks to one of our personal lawyers, not just a legal assistant or agent. Call Alam Law at 416-625-2636 for a free consultation. And remember, you do not pay anything unless I win your case.
There's a lot of reasons why I'm really happy to be working with Greenish, but one of the main ones is their brand philosophy, which is also my personal philosophy, and that is embracing this passion for life. They develop products that help you live your life to the fullest in a wholesome and a healthy way. And Greenish products are really those that I trust, and I trust that you'll trust them as well, because it's all about living your life to the fullest.
So Ravi, you were also a teacher.
Yes.
Besides being a student, you're also a teacher. So what is the distinction that you make when you are actually imparting lessons?
Well, I think that's part of being part of any tradition. You're like, I'm receiving things from my guru or gurus, and I think it's the duty as being part of the tradition to pass on what you have learned. So that's sort of keeping the tradition alive, and you keep it going. So that's I think an important element of any tradition, to receive and also to give.
And so, for how long have you been also tutoring?
I've been teaching at York University in the World Music Program since 2003.
So it's more than 10 years now.
Yes.
And so what has been your experience? Firstly, I mean, what sort of students do you get? And secondly, what has been your experience teaching about an instrument that is clearly not part of the mainstream musical consciousness in the West?
Yes. Yeah, that is definitely the challenge here, is because it's not part of the mainstream culture here. But most of my students tend to be of South Asian background, and at least one or two every year are actually quite good players, and the majority of them have already taken some lessons and played. So they're not starting from total, and because of their background, they have some cultural context in which that they're learning this instrument.
And I believe you also have a session on Hindi cinema music at York University. Am I right?
Yes, I teach a course on the history of Hindi film music, which is, I think, quite ironic, because my parents were not Hindi film watchers at all. We never watched any films. In fact, I think my father was very much into Hindustani classical music, and so he was almost sort of against the film music, But for me, I think I've learned a lot from teaching this course in terms of the history of India, the politics, and the social sort of culture, and the changes that have taken place in India. I've learned so much about that from basically teaching this class.
And what sort of students do you get for that class?
That class, I would say, is 9 99% South Asian. Yes.
Is there, I mean, it is one thing to enjoy music,
Yes.
which a lot of people are capable of. Quite another to be able to discern or understand the nuances that the grammar of that music kind of, you know, you have to understand that. That's not something that everybody understands. And the third is to be able to appreciate popular music, which you don't need to, or at least I assume, don't need to have any grammar at all. So, the question is, these are difficult transitions for a musician to make, and you seem to kind of make them quite naturally.
Well, I think all music can be enjoyed by anyone without necessarily learning anything about them. You know, I mean, it's music is there for everybody's enjoyment. I mean, but of course, as you learn a little bit about it, then it you know becomes more enjoyable. I think because you have more things that you are listening for and looking out for. So in this respect, you know, I enjoy teaching people, even if they're not going to become tabla players, to appreciate on a higher level. Because as a tabla player myself, I want people to be able to appreciate the art on a high level.
And what about film music?
Well, film music, I think people should. It's basically a class which is for non-music majors, you know. So it's a class basically on developing some basic listening and discerning skills. You know, because many of these students are not able to even distinguish between a few different instruments. You know, so it's basic, developing basic listening skills.
And so that brings me to another kind of aspect of this conversation that we are having. Do you think that it is important in a multicultural society for an artist like you to get the sort of representation that you think you deserve in the mainstream? And what has been your experience trying to get that?
Yeah, it's obviously very difficult because even let's take the example of the university. You know, you have Western classical music department, you know, and then you have the jazz music department, and then you have the world music department, which consists of India and Korea and China and Africa and all these countries which have incredible rich traditions, and they're all just lumped together in world music, you know. So that you know, so you're sort of in this world ghetto kind of thing, you know, where so it is certainly you know challenging. And I mean, I don't know how else they would do that at the university, because obviously, you know, the Indian music component is a small component compared to jazz or classical music, but yeah, it's always going to be a struggle over here, I think, to do that. Although I think over time things are changing and opening up, you know, and I think there are certainly more opportunities for South Asian artists now than ever before.
And so when you go and give performances over the years, what is the change that you have observed? Firstly, in the type of audiences that you get, you know, or even the number of people who attend.
Well, I think generally people are more open, and generally people are a little more aware of other cultures. I mean, partly, you know, you can imagine before Ravi Shankar came here, probably, you know, no one had heard of Indian music or even could conceive of what it was. But you know, people like Ravi Shankar ji and Zakir Hussain have, you know, put these instruments and Indian music in the hearts and minds of the general public, you know, because of all the interesting things that and projects that they have done in their lives.
And so you've reached a certain stage in your career as a musician where where do you see yourself growing musically as well as a professional? Where do you see yourself growing in the next few years?
Well, you know, it's like I was saying, my relationship with my guru is really important to me. So I feel myself, even that relationship getting deeper and learning more. And I also want to go back and learn more from Pandit Jain Saab in Chandigarh. And hopefully bring that to whatever music that I'm playing here. So I certainly want to play and practice more Hindustani music, but living in Toronto, I think it's you know, inevitable that I'm going to play with a lot of different people. So and hopefully I can bring some of the richness of the Hindustani tradition to whatever else I do.
So you perform and I have seen you perform with bands in groups which have very different sort of music traditions. It's not classical in the purest sense. Neither is it, you know, very light. There are elements of both. So has that kind of experience? Is that something that you would like to do more, or would you want to go back to your roots and become more of a purist?
Well, I definitely don't want to become a purist, but well, if it's not too much to ask, I would like to do everything.
And so, you know, before we sum up, it's been a 20-year journey for you as a musician, and
here in Toronto, yes.
and it's been something that you have clearly kind of cherished. What are the moments that you remember from these years which kind of stand out in your memory and say, you know, yeah, this is something that I'm very proud of?
Well, the opportunity to have done my Ganda Bandhan ceremony with my uncle, Pandit Nikhil Ghosh, that was, you know, very pivotal time in my life, or pivotal moment in my life, being performing for a distinguished audience of artists and family in Bombay. And you know, I consider it to be a privilege to perform music, you know, and to be able to make my living doing that. So each performance I feel is very important to me, and I feel very fortunate to have played with so many, you know, have opportunities to play with so many great artists in my life, and I hope that will continue on.
And so if I were to say that I'm not quite familiar with the different venues that we have in Toronto, but I've seen you perform at the Harbourfront Centre,
Yes.
which is one of the singularly, you know, well-known places where people of that sort kind of get an opportunity to perform.
Yes.
Would that be the single biggest source of achievement for you?
Well, I don't know if the achievements are based on the venue so much.
As what you do?
As I mean, you know, every like one thing that I am really lucky to have had is the opportunity, even with the fusion projects, to play interesting and challenging music. You know, that is rhythmic and sort of challenges me beyond my ability to do something, or you know, so it's sort of expanding. So those opportunities, I feel, are really special because they allow me to grow and take me out of my comfort zone, you know. So, yeah, I don't know if I can name any one single opportunity that has been, you know, the greatest as such. But I feel that, I mean, for me, every opportunity to play music is something special.
And it's been an evolutionary process for you.
Yes, absolutely.
So, thank you, Ravi.
Thank you, Mayank.
Friends, we were watching an interview with Ravi, who is an expert, an astute tabla player, and who has created, you know, fusion music that is kind of reinventing music in a multicultural milieu. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching this program. This is your program. Send us your suggestions. We will follow what you want us to follow. We will bring artists, we will bring authors, we will bring painters. Suggest. This is your show. That's about the only thing that I wish to say. Thank you very much.
#1 multicultural channel. This is TAG TV.